Hello, guys. Today we'll be talking about pause. Beep. Hello, guys. Today we'll be talking about Dennis Andrew Nilsen. Okay, so Dennis Andrew Nilsen was known to be a Scottish serial killer and I don't know if I'm saying this right, but a necrophile who murdered at least 12 young men and boys between 1978 and bro. Jill. He was a Scottish serial killer and necrophile who murdered at least 12 young men and boys between the years 1978 and 1983. Convinced at the Old Bailey of 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. Nilsen was sentenced to a life imprisonment on November 4th, 1983, with a recommendation that he serves a minimum of 25 years. This recommendation was later changed to a whole life tariff in December 1999. In his later years, Nilsen was imprisoned at HM Prison Full Sultan in the East Riding of Yorkshire. Now, all of Nilsen's murders were committed at the 2 North London addresses where he lived between 1978 and 1983. His victims would be lured to these addresses through descriptions and killed by strangulation. Sometimes accomplished. Oh gosh, I cannot speak. I am so sorry. Sometimes accompanied by drowning. Following each murder, Nilsen would perform a ritual in which he bathed and dressed the victim's body, which he retained for extended periods of time, before disconnecting or disposing the remains of by burning them on a bonfire, or even the part that makes me more sick, like he would flush them down the toilet. Yeah, he would flush them down the toilet sometimes, which I don't know how he got away for so long, because wouldn't they go straight out? But I guess people are just slow sometimes. I mean, I'm kind of slow myself. Okay, Nilsen became known as the can't speak. I'm sorry. Nilsen became known as a Muswell Hill murderer, as he has committed his later murder. I'm done. Okay, Nilsen became known as the Muswell Hill murderer, as he committed his later murders in the Muswell Hill district of North London. He died at York Hospital on the May 12th, 2018 of a pulmonary embolism, and he also had a type of surgery called retroperitoneal. I can't say that word, but I will. Here it is. That's the word. Anyways, which occurred following surgery to repair his abdominal aortic, and again, here's the word. So, Dennis Andrew Nilsen was born on November 23rd, 1945, in Freshburg. I can't say that, but again, I will be publishing everything. I'll be saying any word I cannot pronounce, and you guys could see it and look it up for yourself. The second of the 3 children born to Elizabeth Duchy of White and Olaf Magnus, who had adopted the surname Nilsen. Okay, the marriage between Nilsen's parents was difficult. His father did not view marriage life with any seriousness, being preoccupied with his duties at the Free Norwegian Forces. Yeah. So here we're starting to see, like, where it says a little attempt to spend much time with or find a new home with his wife. So in this of what I've said so far, we could tell that they don't have a good family bond. They didn't have a connection between each other, meaning that could affect it in a way. But okay, let's continue. I don't have much information to give on you because yeah. Okay, so princess. Okay, anyways. After the birth of the 3rd child, Nilsen's mother concluded she had rushed into marriage without thinking. meaning they didn't really love each other. They married each other for reasons that they had to or needed a way to escape. The couple divorced in 1948. All three of the couple's children, Olaf Jr., Dennis, and Sylvia, had been conceived on their father's brief visits to their mother's household. Had been conceived on their father's brief visits to their mother's household. Her parents, Andrew and Lily, and White, not to mention, who had never approved of their daughter's choice of husband, were supportive of their daughter following her divorce and considerate of her grandchildren. Nilsson was a very quiet, yet he was a very crazy, energetic child. He would be everywhere, but he would be kept to himself, in other words. His earliest memories were his family picnics in the Scottish countryside with his mothers and siblings of his grandparents' Pierce lifestyle, which he later described as a cold and door. And of being taken on the long countryside, and of being taken on the long countryside walks he carried on the shoulder the material of his grandfather, to whom he was particularly close to his grandfather. He was always by him at all times. Not to say at all times, he wasn't by him at all times, but he had a close connection to his grandfather. So Olaf Jr. and Sylvia occasionally accompanied Nilsson and his grandfather on these walks. Despite being 5 years old, Nilsson vividly recalled these walks being very long along the harbor across. Did I write harbor right? Wait, I didn't. Anyways, along the harbor, across the wide stretch of a beach to the sand-up dunes, which rise 30 feet behind the beach. So he later described this stage of childhood as one of contentment, and his grandfather of being great hero and protector, adding whatever his grandfather, who was a fisherman, by the way, he was always most of the time at sea. Nilsson would say that life would be empty for me until he returned, meaning that every time his grandfather would leave, he had nobody but himself because he did not like communicating and acting up with other people. So by 1954, Nilsson's grandfather's health was in decline, but he continued to work. On the 31st of October 1951, while fishing in the North Sea, he died of a heart attack at the age of 62. His body was brought ashore and returned to the White family home prior to burial. So they brought him back after he had his heart attack during fishing. And, well, of course, Nilsson had no idea that his grandfather was dead. And when they brought him back to bury him, he must have felt a huge shock go through his body, as he also says that, well, here in Nilsson later was described as his most vivid childhood recollection. His mother, weeping, asked him whether he wanted to see his grandfather. And when he replied that he did, he was taken off into his room where his grandfather lay in an open coffin. As Nilsson glazed, well, I guess we could all know what happened. So as Nilsson gazed upon the body, his mother told him that his grandfather was sleeping, adding that he had gone to a better place. Now, in the years following the death of his grandfather, Nilsson became more quiet and withdrawn, often standing alone during the harbor watching the heritage boats. At home, he seldom participated in the family activities and retreated from any attempts of adult family members to demonstrate. He would move away from anyone who tried to show any physical or mental affection towards him, because they knew he was going through a rough time because his grandpa was always with him. So the way to try to get him back to how he wasn't really working, as he has detached himself from the family and went on a solo run, meaning he didn't want to no longer be a part of the family. He didn't really have any interest in the family. So Nilsson grew to resent to what he saw as an unfair amount of attention of his mother, grandfather, and later his stepfather displayed towards his older brother and younger sister. Nilsson envied Olaf Jr.'s popularity. That was obvious. He often talked or played games with his younger sister Sylvia, to whom he was closer to anyone and a family member following his grandfather's passing. So, on one of his solo excursions to the beach in the Inverarity, we're putting that word up too because I don't know how to say it. In 1954 or 1955, Nelson became submerged beneath the water and he almost dragged out to the sea. He initially panicked, flailing his arms and shouting as he gasped for air, which wasn't there. That's what he said, that he was gasping for air that wasn't there. He recalled believing that his grandfather was about to arrive and pull him out before experiencing a scene of tranquility. His life was saved by another youth who dragged him to shore. Shortly after this incident, Nelson's mother moved out of his grandparents' home and into a flat... Oh wait, I need to catch my breath. This isn't too much information. Nelson's mother moved out of the grandparents' home and into a flat where their 3 children... with her 3 children. So they technically moved out of the only place he remembered where his grandpa was because that's where they lived and that's where he also was like he died, but that was the last place he was seen before leaving. So we kind of go how this is working up and building up his past. She later married a builder named Andrew Scott, with whom she had 4 more children. And as in many years, although Nelson initially he hated his stepfather, he would view him, as he said, that he would view him as an unfair disciplinarian, which the definition of that is technically is the self-control that is gained by requiring the rules of or others be obeyed. And I guess Nelson really didn't find that fair. He gradually came to grudgingly respect him. So he had no option. He hated him, but he forced himself to respect him. The family moved on to the Striction in 1955. At the onset of puberty, Nelson discovered he was gay, which he was initially confused and shamed him. He was ashamed of himself about barely finding out that he was gay. He thought it was wrong, something that he shouldn't be feeling. He kept his sexuality hidden from his family and a few of his friends. Because many of the boys to whom he was attracted had facial features similar to those of his younger sister Sylvia, and occasionally he sexually fondled her, believing that his attraction towards boys might be a manifestation of his care he felt for her. Nelson made no efforts to seek sexual contact with any of his peers to whom he was sexually attracted to, although he later said that he has been fondled by an older youth and did not find any of the experience unpleasant, meaning that someone older than him, in other words, he has done it with someone older than him, and he found no disgust. He felt comfortable and he felt like it was right. So, on one occasion, he also caressed and fondled the body of his older brother as he slept. As a result of this, Olaf Jr. began to suspect his brother was gay and regularly belittled him. He would say, in other words, he would tease that he is gay in public, referring him as a hen, which in other words, in a Scottish slang for girl. Nelson initially believed that his fawning for his sister may have been evidence that he was bisexual. As Nelson progressed into adolescence, he found life in the Striction increasing stifling with limited entertainment, amenities, or a career opportunity. He respected his parents' efforts to provide and care for their children, but began to resent the fact that his family was poorer than most of his peers. So, as you can see, he was starting to feel envy over other people because of other of his peers, his friends. They had more than what he could ever receive at the moment. So he said maybe we could find a different solution to this, which his mother and stepfather was making no effort to better their lifestyles, as you could tell, because they were fine themselves. They had what they wanted, they did what they wanted, and they had no reason to change, right? So they continued to be themselves, try not changing anything for their kids or for themselves, as they liked how it was. Nelson Sendom invited his friends to the family home. At the age of 14, he joined the Army Cadet Force, viewing the British Army as a potential avenue of escaping his rural origins. So now his army services was like now a way for him to escape. Like, he used it as a way to leave his home because he did not really enjoy or like being there. Nelson's scholastic record was above average. He displayed a flair of his history and art, but shunned sports. He finished his schooling in 1961 and briefly worked in a candy factory, as he considered a career path that he would choose. After 3 weeks at the factory, Nelson informed his mother that he intended to join the army and receive training as a chef. Nelson passed the average examinations and received official notification that he was enlisted for 9 years service in September 1961, commencing his training with the Army Catering Corps. Okay. Within weeks, Nelson began to excel in his army duties. He later described his 3 years of training at Aldershot as the happiest time of my life. As he was away from home, he realized that he didn't want to be there. He felt more comfortable away, and he just really did not enjoy being home. So he found peace in the army, where he has exceeded, he has made great places, great things, right? Well, he's still a bad person. He relished the travel opportunities and they offered him. So his training and recalled his highlight as regiment, taking a part in the ceremonial setting. Look, guys, I am Mexican. I'm struggling here. Okay, ceremonial parade attended by both the Queen and Field Marshal Lord of Alamein. Is that a little fly in my room? Fuck. Okay. So, I am taking no breaks right now, okay? So my throat hurts. Everything hurts. And I'm going to have a lot of editing after this, but that's okay. That's okay. Get this stupid fly. Oh, I actually trapped it. Ew, that's nasty. Okay. While stationed at Aldershot, Nelson's latent feelings began to stir as he kept his sexual orientation well hidden from his colleagues. Nelson never showed, in the company of his fellow soldiers for fear of in other words, he never showered with his peers or fellow soldiers because he feared he would develop an erection in their presence. So, in other words, for people who don't know what an erection is, it's in other words when their man's penis gets hard when they feel attracted to someone or feel pleasure of seeing someone or something. And it's when they... Yeah, I'm not explaining more of that, but you got the idea. So, in their presence, instead of obtaining to bath alone in the bathroom, which also afforded him the privacy to masturbate without being discovered. In the mid-1964, Nelson passed his initial catering exam, and he was officially assigned to the 1st Battalion of the Royal Fusiliers. The word's right here, so it's okay. Where he has served as a private. In this deployment, Nelson began to increase in intake of alcohol. He described himself and his colleagues as a hard-working, boozy lot. His colleagues recalled he often drank to excesses in order to ease his shyness. On one occasion, Nelson and a German youth drank themselves into a stupor. When Nelson awoke, he found himself on the floor of the German youth flat. No sexual activity has occurred, but this incident fueled Nelson's sexual fantasies, which initially involved his sexual partner. So, invarities of a young, slender male being completely passive, these fantasies gradually evolved into his partner being unconscious. So, as you can see, here he has mentioned that these fantasies gradually evolved into his partner being unconscious or dead. So he didn't want actual sexual pleasure towards someone who was feeling pleasure with them too. Instead, he wanted them to be unconscious or completely gone, meaning that he had no intentions of actually feeling the same thing with a bond of a person with someone else. Instead, he wanted to take advantage of people. He wanted to feel the pleasure and adrenaline that rises by your body when you're doing something you know you're not supposed to. So, on several occasions, Nelson also made tentative efforts to have his own prone body sexually interfered with one of his colleagues. In these instances, whenever he and his colleagues drank to excess, Nelson would pretend he was inhibited in hope of his colleagues would make sexual use of his supposedly unconscious body. Following 2 years of the service of Osnabrück, I hope I said that right, Nelson returned to Aldershot, where he passed his official catering exam. Before being developed to serve as a cook for the British Army in Norway, in 1964 he was deployed to the state of Aden, formerly Aden colony, now part of Yemen. So, where he began to serve as a cook at the Al Masura prison. This posting was more dangerous than his previous posting in the West Germany or Norway. And Nielsen later recalled his regiment losing several men, often in ambushes, and wrote to the army barracks. What a weird word. Okay. Nielsen was kidnapped by an Arab taxi driver who beat him unconscious and placed him into the boot of his car. Interesting, right? So he was having a okay life, but he had fantasies that put him aside, shyness, and he would take advantage and try to get taken advantage of because that was his fantasy. He wanted to be used. He wanted to be touched. He wanted to feel pleasure. He wanted someone to be unconscious or dead to feel pleasure with him. So, upon being dragged out of the boot, Nelson grabbed a jack handle and knocked the taxi driver to the ground before beating him unconscious. He then locked the man in the boot of the taxi. Unlike the previous postings, Nelson had his own room while stationed in Aden. Okay, wait, let's do a little pause. Pancho, come here. So, this is Pancho. Say hi, Pancho. This is my baby. Down. And the little other one, she doesn't want to really come here. She's a really crazy woman, so she doesn't like being touched, but she likes running away. I respect that, though. She could do whatever she wants. So, this afforded him the privacy to masturbate without discovery. His developed fantasies of sex with an unresistant or decreased partner unfulfilled. Nelson, why are you biting my shoes? Get out of here. Okay. Where was I? Decreased partner unfulfilled. Nelson compensated by imagining sexual encounters with an unconscious body as he masturbated, while looking at his own prone nude body in a mirror. In one occasion, Nelson discovered by using a freestanding mirror, he could create an effect of a whereby of positioning the mirror so his head was out of view. He could visualize himself engaged in a sexual act with another man. To Nelson, this ruse created an ideal circumstance in which he could visually split his personality. In these masturbatory fantasies, Nelson, why is this word getting harder and harder to read? I am so sorry. I don't know where my glasses are, and I can't really read without them. I also can't pronounce specific words, so if you guys don't understand me, I'll correct it after. So while Nelson was envisioned himself as being both domineering and passive partner, these fantasies gradually involved the comfort of his own near-death experience with the Arab taxi driver. Arab, I think that you say it. I am so sorry if this is disrespectful. Taxi driver. The dead body he had seen in Aden, and the imagery within a 19th century oil painting entitled The Wrath of the Medusa. As I will show right here, the Wrath of the Medusa is this image right here, which depicts an old man holding the limp nude of a dead youth as he sits aside as the dismembered body of another young male. So, In Nelson's most vividly recalled fantasy, a slender, attractive young blonde soldier who had been directly killed in a battle is dominated by a faceless, dirty, gray-haired old man who washed his body before engaging in the intercourse with the spreading. And as it says here, as he washed his body before engaging in the intercourse with the spread. So how do I say it? Spread Daglick's corpse. And if we want to know what that is, it's technically it's the position in which a person has their arms stretched out and their legs figuratively resembling an eagle with wings spread. Like they're like completely spread away. When I have laundry back there, I have to do. That's okay though. That's okay. Okay, corpse. So, when Nelson completed his deployment in Aden, he returned to the UK and was assigned to serve with the... I can't say that. Okay, Argley and Sutherland Highlanders at the Sierra Towns Barracks. Throughout his service with this regiment, he was required to cook for 30 soldiers and 2 officers on a daily basis. Oh God. It's okay. Okay, Nelson served at these barracks for once a year before being transferred with the Argley and the Sutherland Highlanders. In 1969, we start getting closer to the interesting part, but that's okay. Months later, the regiment was transferred to the West Berlin, where the same year Nelson had his first sexual experience with a woman, a prostitute, whose services he has solicited. He bragged his sexual encounter to his colleagues, but later stated that he found the intercourse with a female both overrated and depressing. So technically he's gay. He wasn't bisexual, nothing else. Gay. That's okay. Following the brief period of Argley and Sutherland Highlanders, Nelson was selected to cook for the Queen's Royal Guard before in January 1971, being reassigned to serve as a cook for a different regiment in the shit. I'm sorry if I said a bad word. What I meant to say is Shetland Islands, where he ended his 11-year military career. Oh shoot, why am I glitching so much? Where he ended his 11-year military career at the rank of the corporal in October 1972. So, between October and December 1972, Nelson lived with his family as he considered his next career move. On more than one occasion in 3 months, Nelson lived in the Strichen. His mother voiced her opinion as to her being more concerned about his lack of female companionship than his career path, and her desire to see him marry and start a family. On one occasion, Nelson joined his older brother Olav and his sister-in-law and another couple to watch a documentary about a gay man. God, okay. And Present viewed the topic with derision, except Nelson, who utterly spoke in defense of gay rights. So he spoke up about what he thought about it, showing more to his sibling, aka siblings, brother, about what he thought about it, meaning he would soon know. Nelson fought ensued, which after Olaf Jr. informed his mother that Nelson was gay. As you see where I was going, that he found out. Nelson never spoke to his older brother again, and maintained only sporadic written contact with his mother, stepfather, and younger siblings. He decided to join the Metropolitan Police and moved to London in December to begin a training course. So, in April 1973, Nelson completed his police training and was posted to Willesden Green. Still a cadet and junior constable, he performed several arrests, but he never had physically subdue a member of the public. Nelson enjoyed the work, but missed the comradeship of the army. He began to drink alone in the evening. During the summer and autumn of 1973, Nelson began frequenting gay pubs and engaged in several casual liaisons with men. So if you don't know what casual liaisons with men are, it's in other words a sexual activity that takes place outside of a romantic relationship and implies an absence of commitment, emotional attachment, or family between sexual partners. So examples are sexual activity while casually dating, one-night stands, prostitution, or swinging, and friends with benefit relationships. So all of that is technically all casual liaisons with men. He viewed these encounters as soul-destroying liaisons in which he would only lend his partner his body in vain. So as he saw a lasting relationship in August following a failed relationship, Nelson came out to the conclusion that his personal lifestyle was at odds with his job. His birth father died at the same month, leaving each three of his children 1,000 won. Oh, holy shit, what the fuck is this? My bad, I don't mean to cuss, y'all. I really don't. But we're gonna say it's like Euro money. Europa money. I need to find out the name, y'all. Europe. You know what? Whatever. We're gonna call it euros because that's what it is, but in Spanish, euros. So, and honestly, in December, Nelson resigned from the police. Between December 1973 and May 1974, Nelson worked as a security guard. The work was intermittent, and he was resolved to find more stable, secure employment. He found work as a civil servant in May 1974. Nelson was initially posted to a job center in Denmark Street, where his primary role was to find employment for unskilled laborers. Again, I don't know what the word is. I mean, I do know what it is. I don't know how to pronounce it. So, laborers, something like that. It's close. His workplace, Nelson was known to be quiet and conscientious employee who was active in the trade union movement. So, again, when he was younger, after his grandpa died, why did I say fought? Okay, after his grandpa died, we could tell that he went very quiet, very silent, very detached, and moved on to more something away from home because it will help him future on. And then, as you could tell, he went back to that way in one of his jobs, and he was known to being more silent, more to himself. He kept things to himself. His attendance record was mediocre, although he frequently volunteered to work overtime, leading to several colleagues to suspect that he was doing something of a loner. So, in 1979, Nielsen was appointed acting executive Okay, wait. He was officially promoted to the position of executive officer, which, in other words, we could say that is the grading system used in a civil service that has changed many times. So he was officially promoted in that position, and of course, with additional supervisory responsibilities. In June 1984, he transferred to another job center in Kentish Town, counting his job until his arrest. In June 1984, he transferred to another job center in Kentish Town, as I have mentioned before. So, in November 1975, Nelson encountered a 20-year-old man named Davis Galichan being treated outside the pub by two other men. Nelson intervened into the interaction and took Galichan to his room at 80, whatever this word is right here, in the Cricklewood district of North London. The two men spent the evening drinking and talking. Nelson learned that Galichan had recently moved to London from the Western Supermare. Somerset was gay, unemployed, and was resigning to a hostel. So, the following morning, both men agreed to live together in a larger residence, and Nelson, using a part of the inheritance bequeathed to him by his father, immediately resolved to a larger property. So, several days later, the pair viewed a vacant ground, like floor flat, how do I explain it to you? Several days later, the pair viewed a vacant ground floor flat at 195 Melrose Avenue. So, also in Cricklewood, yeah, and they decided to move into the property prior to moving into Melrose Avenue. Nelson negotiated a deal with the landlord where. Okay, so he had made a deal with the landlord. Oh, God damn it. Okay, with the landlord whereby he and Galichan had exclusive use of the garden at the rear of the property. So, the Melrose Avenue flat was supposed to be furnished upon moving, and their pair found it to be largely threadable. So, over the following months, the couple redecorated and furnished the entire flat. Much of his work was performed by Galichan, and as Nelson, having discovered Galichan's lack of employment ambitions, began to view himself as a breadwinner. So, breadwinner is a power game of the family center of a breadwinner. So, technically, in other words, the member of the family who earns the money to support the others. So in their relationship, Nelson later recollected that he was sexually attracted to Galichan, but their pair seldom had intercourse. So initially, Nelson experienced domestic contentment with Galichan, but within a year of their moving to Melrose Avenue, the superficial relation. Okay. So, the superficial relationship between the two men began to show signs of strain. He slept in separate beds, and both began to bring home casual sexual partners. Galichan later insisted in Nelson had never been physically violent towards him, but that he did engage in verbal abuse. And verbal abuse, for those who don't know, because I'm explaining it because there's some people who don't know specific things, and I'm requiring this information for anyone. So verbal abuse is when you use words to affect someone, like against them, towards them. And so, for example, if I were to go you fucking asshole, okay, we're not gonna do that because we're trying to keep this appropriate, but it's kind of like cussing and making people feel down, telling them things that will make them feel like horrible. So, and well, when they start engaging in verbal abuse, and the pair had begun arguing with increasing frequency by the early 1976. Nelson later stated that following the heated argument in May 1977, he demanded Galichan to leave the residence. Galichan later informed the investigators that he had chosen to end the relationship. That gone. So, Nelson, oh God, wait, too much air. How long have I been recording? Oh, shoot, 38 minutes. That's long, but that's okay. I'm willing to go far. Okay, Nelson formed brief relationships with several other young men. Over the following 18 months, none of these relationships lasted more than a few weeks. And none of the men expressed any intention of living with him on a permanent basis. By the late 1978, he was living a solitary existence. He had experienced at least 3 failed relationships in the previous 18 months. And he later confessed that having developed an increasing conviction that he was unique to live with. Throughout 1978, he devoted an ever-increasing amount of his time, effort, and assiduity to his work. So, slowly turning into a workaholic. He spent most of his evening consuming spirits or larger as he listened to music. So, Now to the murders. Between 1978 and 1983, Nielsen known to have killed a minimum of 12 men and boys. Now, he had attempted to kill 7 others, initially confessed in 1983 to having killed about 16 victims. The majority of Nielsen's victims were homeless or gay men. So, others were heterosexual, or people were typically met in bars, on public transport, or on one occasion outside his own home. All of Nielsen's murders were committed inside the 2 North London addresses, where he had resided in the years he known to have killed his victims. So his victims were lured to these addresses throughout Gilly, and typically the offer of alcohol or shelter. So as I mentioned, that he's also taken in homeless people, strippers in general, gay people, people at clubs. So I feel like the ones he would keep for shelter are the ones he would take off the street to take advantage of. So inside Nelson's home, the victims were usually given food and alcohol, then strangled. So if you don't know what strangle means that you're like, for example, anything could used to be strangled. This sweater, if anything, could be used to be strangled. This could strangle you. Your necklace could be used to strangle you. Anything like to choke you to death, or just technically just choke you. So, typically with a ligature, which that is strangling someone with some like a form of cord, such as a rope, wire, chain, or shoelaces, as I mentioned before, as we could use my own sweater to strangle or choke someone. Each other to death until they had become unconscious. If the victim had been strangled into unconsciousness, Nielsen then drowned him in his bathtub, his sink, or bucket of water before observing the ritual, in which he had bath clothes and retained their bodies inside his residence for several weeks or occasionally months before he dismembered them. Each victim killed between 1978 and 1981 at his Cricklewood residence was disposed as via burning upon a bonfire. Prior to their dissection, Nielsen removed their initial organs, which he disposed of either bedside in the bench behind the flat or close to Gladstone Park. If you guys don't know what that is, you guys can search it up. Gladstone Park is a place where he had buried organs of his victims. So, the victims killed in 1982 and 1983 at his Mushwell Hill. So, residence where he had retained his flat with their flesh and smaller bones flushed down the lavatory. Nielsen admitted to engaging in masturbation as he viewed the nude bodies of several of his victims, and he had engaged in sexual acts with 6 of his victims' bodies, but was adamant that he had never penetrated any of his victims. So, in other words, he never, the word penetrated is technically the term most commonly used in a statute law or context of certain sexual activities. Terms as sexual intercourse or carnal knowledge are mostly commonly found in older statutes and shit like that. But sexual penetration is the insertion of a body part or another object into the body, such as mouth, vagina, anus, or any part of the human sexual activity or sexual behavior in non-human animals. So, meaning that he admitted that he never really the bodies. Okay, so he never really did that, as he said. We don't know that though, but that's what he mentioned, that he had never penetrated any of his victims, that he's only masturbated or looked at himself doing what he does. So, 195 Melrose Avenue. Bless you. Okay, Nielsen killed his first victim, 14 years old Stephen Holmes, on the 30th of December 1978. Holmes encountered Nielsen's in the Cricklewood Arms pub, where Holmes has unsuccessfully attempted to purchase alcohol. According to Nielsen, he had been drinking heavily alone on the day he met Holmes before deciding that the evening He must at all costs leave his flat and seek company. Nelson invited Holmes to his house, in which he promised of them two drinking alcohol and listening to music. Now, believing him to be approximately 17 years old, at Nelson's home, both he and Holmes drank heavily. He began to fall asleep. The following morning, Nelson awoke to find sleeping Holmes beside him on the bed. His subsequent written confessions, Nelson stated that he was afraid to wake him in case he left me. After caressing the sleeping youth, Nelson decided that Holmes was to stay with me forever, the new year, whether he wanted to or not. Now, to me, personally, that sounds like obsession to me. It sounds like obsession. Like, I've heard that phrase so many times, but not in the bad way, please don't. Like, in games, Yandere games, which we'll be doing more of that content later. We're going to be doing game content. We're going to be information, cases. We're going to do even reacting content. So please join in. By the way, I am Leah. And let's continue. Okay, so reaching for a necktie, Nelson straddled Holmes as he strangled him into unconsciousness, before drowning the teenager in a bucket filled with water. Nelson then washed the body in his bathtub before placing Holmes on the bed and caressing his body. He twice masturbated over the body before awaiting the passing of rigor mortis to enable him to sore corpse beneath the floorboards. Okay, Holmes' bond. Okay, so we're not even close to done, but we're like, it's close. Okay. Holmes' bond corpse remained beneath the floorboards almost 8 months before Nelson built a bonfire in the garden behind his flat and burned the body on August 11th, 1979. Okay, so I eased him into his new bed beneath the floorboards. A week later, I wonder whether his body has changed at all or started to decompose. I disintegrated him and pulled off the dirt-stained youth onto the floor. His skin was very dirty. I stripped myself naked and carried him into the bathroom and washed the body. There was practically no discoloration and his skin was pale white. His limbs were more relaxed than when I had put him down there. Nelson written recollections of the ritual he observed after the murder of his victim. Reflecting on his killing spree in 1983, Nelson stated that having killed Holmes caused dreams that caused death, and this is my crime. That's what he said. So he has mentioned that. Adding that, he also stated that he started down the avenue of death and possession of a new kind of flatmate. On October 11th, 1979, Nelson attempted to murder a student of Hong Kong named Andrew Ho, whom he had met at Martin's Lane pub and lured to his flat on a promise of sex. As you could tell, Hong Kong was probably he needed attention. He probably needed sexual activity, and Nelson attempted to strangle. Oh shoot, that scared me. So Nelson attempted to strangle Ho, who managed to flee from his flat and reported the incident to the police. Nelson was questioned in relationship of the incident, but Ho decided not to press charges, which I sure the fuck would press charges. I would press charges, but that does not matter. My opinion doesn't matter because this is not me, not what I'm doing, so it's not my business. Kind of it is because I'm telling it to you guys, which I am gladly telling you guys. So 2 months after the attempted murder of Ho, on the 3rd of December in 1979, Nelson encountered a 23-year-old Canadian student named Kenneth Ockenden. I hope I say your last name right. Who had been on a tour of England visiting relatives. Nelson encountered an as they both drank in a West End pub. Upon learning the young man was a tourist, Nelson offered to show the Ockenden several London landmarks, an offer which he accepted. Nelson then invited the student to his house on a promise of a meal and further drinks. The pair stopped at an off-license en route to Nelson's residence and purchased whiskey, rum, and beer. So, Insisting on sharing the bill, Nelson was adamant that he could not recall the precise moment that he strangled. Okay, I can't not say his last name. I really cannot say his last name, so we're just gonna go with his first name because, okay, so Kenneth. But Ken strangled Kenneth. But he recalled that he strangled the young man with a cord of his headphones as Kenneth listened to music. He also recalled dragging Kenneth across the floor with a wire wrapped around his neck as he strangled him before pouring himself a half glass of rum. Oh God. I suck at reading. I'm sorry. A half glass of rum and continuing to listen to music on the headphones in which he had strangled Kenneth. The following day, Nelson purchased a Polaroid. So, a Polaroid is a type of camera, it prints shortly after the picture, like those old-time cameras, like for example. You know what? Wait here. Never mind. I cannot find my camera. So this is what it looked like. So it was a mini camera. This is not what the camera looks like. So here's how it looks. This is an instant camera. So it would instantly take pictures and print them out right after. So that's what he bought after. And he would photograph Kenneth's body in very suggestive positions. He then laid Kenneth's corpse spread angled above him on his bed, and then he watched television for several hours before wrapping the body in plastic bags and throwing the corpse beneath the floorboards. On approximately 4 occasions over the following fortnight, Nelson disinterred Kenneth's body from beneath his floorboards and seated the body upon his armchair alongside him as he himself watched television and drank alcohol. Nelson killed his third victim, a 16-year-old named Martin Duffy. On 17 May 1980, Duffy was a catering student from Bickerhead, Merseyside, who had hitched to London without his parents' knowledge on the May 13th after being questioned by the British Transport Police for invading his transfer. For 4 days, Duffy had slept rough near the Eastern Railway station before Nelson encountered the youth as he returned from a union's conference in the Southport. As you can see, he killed most of his victims the same. Like every of his victims, they were killed the same way. So, in other words, I kind of want to say that he had this way and he knew he wouldn't get caught in a way because he knew what was happening. So, in this video, I am really not going to be able to finish all the information on Dennis Nelson. So, we'll stop with this. So, right now, I hope you come to part 2 because it is 7:15 and I have class tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I make a video every week now. I am barely starting. I'm trying to create a YouTube channel. You guys are very precious. Remember that. You guys are great. Mentality. Oh, you guys look cute, bro. But okay. Let's chillax. So I will finish part 2, which will be another long hour. But that's okay. Okay, so I will be calling you guys my dumplings because I love dumplings and I love you guys. So please like, subscribe, and watch out, turn on your notifications, and go to part 2 because this gets even more crazier with time.